Hey there, welcome to the Renaissance Woodworker Shop Update. This week I want to talk about workbenches and specifically dog holes on workbenches. It's one of the most common questions I get when somebody has just finished a workbench or nearing the end of their workbench. They want to know, where should I put my dog holes? How many dog holes do I need? Where's a good place to start? And I'm usually responding with the answer of, put as few as possible and add them as you need them, which I'm discovering is a really maddening and frustrating answer when you have a blank slate and don't know where to go. I obviously have an arrangement of dog holes on my bench that I work with for years. I'm incredibly happy with it. But having recently just built a workbench for semester point 5, I put a lot of thought into this. If I had a blank surface with no dogs, where would I start? What would be the minimum number of dogs and where would I put them? Now, a lot of this will depend upon the vices that you use. If you have a tail vise, like I have, I've got a row of dogs that's in line with this, well, technically it's a wagon vise, and they're spaced 3 inches on center all the way down the bench. You may have already realized this, but I barely use this tail vise anymore, and I'm not really a fan of tail vices. I really, when it comes to planing, want to work against a planing stop. If I need to secure it in place, I'm using holdfasts of some sort, or a batten or a doe's foot or something like that, because I don't like to secure my work while I'm planing it. For all the joinery stuff, I'm using bench hooks and I'm using holdfasts. So certainly a vise will dictate some of that. Some people will put a face vise in, and you do want some dogs in line with that. So that would be the first thing. If you have a vise that's meant to do some surface clamping, you do need a row of dog holes there. And frankly, 3 inches on center, I really like that. I know some people who recommend 5 inches on center, and I just think that's a little too much adjustment in the vise. But assuming you don't have a vise, which has become pretty popular nowadays, you don't need that row of dog holes. What you do need are a row of dog holes along kind of the back quarter of the workbench. You need a couple dog holes down on this end, or excuse me, depending on, I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be planing to the right. If you're planing to the left, you want a couple dog holes for a planing stop. So in my case, I've got 2 dog holes to secure my planing stop down on the right-hand side. You may have dog holes down on the left-hand side to secure your planing stop. I don't know that you really need more than 2 to secure a planing stop. I'm actually not a fan of the full width planing stops. Maybe 10 inches at most is what I really recommend. For super wide boards, you can usually come up with something else. The wide planing stops usually end up getting in the way when you're not actually planing that wide board. And most of the boards we have are going to be in the 6 to 8 inch range. So if you've got a 10-inch board, that's enough. So that would be the first place I would start, is put in dog holes for your planing stop. You want to put it down so that the planing stop is flush to the front edge of your bench. So about 2 inches from the end and maybe 2 inches in from the front edge is where those dog holes will lie, and you'll space them on your planing stop depending on how wide it is. So if it's a 10-inch planing stop, I think it's a good idea to set the dog 2 inches in from the ends of the stop. So 2 inches in from the front, and then 2 inches in from the end of that planing stop. So that would be the first one. That's the most important thing for the milling that you do. Now, for the rest of the holes, they're essentially going to be 2 rows. We already have a dog down here for the planing stop, and dependent upon your bench, I say about 2 inches from the inside from the front edge. And the reason for that, if you have an English style bench with a thick apron, you need to put that dog hole inside the thickness of that apron. Otherwise, you're going to be drilling into the cross axis of that apron, and the hole will never break through. You'll never bottom out, and you'll never be able to get that dog back up. You want to be able to reach under and push the dog back up, and if it just goes into a blind hole, you'll never get that back out. So once you've established the dog hole for your planing vise, that'll be the line that you work on along the front edge of the bench. And I want to put between 4 and 5 holes spaced 12 inches apart along the front edge. So we're just going to say 2 inches from the front edge, and I'm going to place holes, 4 or 5 of them, depending on how long your bench is, 12 inches apart along that front edge. I would recommend coming in about 24 inches from one edge and putting a dog hole right there, and I've got one right here. Then you would have one another 12 inches. Why 12 inches? And this is going to vary a little bit. So rather than saying 12 inches, I would say the diameter of your holdfast reach. So the holdfast goes in a hole, and obviously it rotates around, creating a circle. the diameter of the reach, how far can it reach this way, how far can it reach that way. If you have holdfast spaced the diameter apart, then what happens is you're always going to have a little bit of overlap. So I can reach, if I put a holdfast here and a holdfast there, I can reach all of this area. 2 circles, 12-inch diameter, will reach this entire area with a little bit of overlap. So if I put them 12 inches down the front edge here, I can reach anywhere along the bench edge. And why is this here? Well, first and foremost, you can put a dog in it and you can work right along the front edge. So if you're doing work with like a fenced plane and you want to take a board, let me get a board, and you want to run the fence up against the front edge here, flush with the front edge of your bench, you want a dog that's relatively close to the front edge. The other holes will allow you to utilize a holdfast to secure the board in place. Now it's firmly in place. I could stick a molding, I could plow a groove, I could cut a rabbet, I could do all kinds of stuff this way. The other important reason for this is sawing. If you have ever wanted to use a panel saw and remove some material from an already thickness panel, this line of dogs can allow you to clamp with 2 holdfasts right to the front edge, and I can saw off a narrow edge. I can use that upright sawing technique at the bench. 4 or 5 of them is really all you need. Again, if I came in 24 inches, then I would go 36 inches, 48 inches, probably 60 inches. That's only 3 holes, but that's going to cover like this whole distance. Will allow me to clamp a board, and I really don't need that much space. I'm rarely going to be plowing down on this end of the bench. I'm going to probably be plowing and have the longest run that I can take with the board. So even 3 holes along the front edge, maybe 4, would be enough to serve as a planing stop and to serve as holdfast holes to hold down work. The other thing you can do when you're working with a bench hook is these holes along the front edge can be very beneficial for holding something on your bench hook. So say I'm working on this board and I'm doing some joinery work over here, I can bring this holdfast around, clamp it in place, and it's very secure because it's up against the fence. I have my planing stop, my paring hook. My paring hook is secured in place because of the holdfast, and I can do all kinds of work very, very securely. So that's the row of holes, just a few holes right along that front edge. Next is a row of holes along the back. And again, I want to space the holes based upon the holdfast reach. So I'll start a hole on the back about the radius of the holdfast reach. And mine's actually spaced in a little bit further than that. If I were to rebore these holes, I would make it closer to the edge. My holdfast has about a 13-inch diameter. So 6 inches, 6.5 inches is my radius. I would place the hole in 6 inches from the edge, which means that I can reach all the way to the edge, clamp something right up to the edge, then space it the diameter, 12 inches. So now I can reach all the way to the edge, I can reach all the way to this point, and this holdfast overlaps it. So again, reach all the way to the back, to the edge, in between. I can cover this entire surface, and I'm spacing it the diameter, in my case 12 inches, down the length of the bench. Now more than likely you're going to run off the end. I would space the opposite end of the bench 6 inches in. So between the penultimate hole and the last hole, it might be a little bit smaller than the diameter, but it doesn't make sense to put that dog hole real close to the edge of the bench. You might as well bring it in the 6 inches so you get the full rotation. Now, how far back do you put that row of holes? So divide your bench down the center, and you could then divide it in quarters and say sink the hole in the center of that back half. I actually recommend you find the center line, then find the center of the back half, that quarter mark. Space it about 1 to 2 inches towards the front of that line. And what this does is it allows the holdfast to come in and span across the center line. So my center line of the bench is right here. if you had a planing stop here, you could lift the planing stop, take your workpiece, run it up against that planing stop, and still be able to use a holdfast to reach over the planing stop and secure something against the planing stop. So just like I did with the paring hook earlier, where I wanted to hold something in place on the paring hook, I can do the same thing with this row of holes in the back. I can reach over the fence of the paring hook and secure something onto my bench hook or paring hook. Or if you have that central notch, it's the same thing. And again, that should still give you enough reach to reach either right up to the back edge or within an inch of the back edge. And frankly, how much work are you going to be doing along the back edge of the bench? So that's it. That's how I would start. And I think you would be hard pressed to find a reason to add more dog holes from here. Now I've created a diagram of the starter set of dog holes that you want to drill onto your workbench. And it follows those ideas of examine the reach, the radius, and the diameter of your holdfast. Most holdfasts are relatively close. I think a 6-inch radius is about standard for most holdfasts. You'll find some of them are a little bit bigger. You might want to think about that. Are you using different kinds of holdfasts and maybe find an average? But the idea will be that you always have a tiny bit of overlap in your reach so that no matter where you are in the bench, you'll reach it. Total of 12 holes will cover everything you need. You may find something really, really specific and you want a specific hole in that space because of a task that you do over and over again, but that comes later. Let's start with those 10 to 12 holes and you will be really happy with the capabilities that offers for you.